had worked on starships for 34 years. His hands were rough and covered with old scars. Grease lived under his fingernails no matter how hard he scrubbed. His back hurt from bending over engines all day, and his knees made strange sounds when he walked upstairs, but did not complain. He loved his work. He loved the sound of a healthy engine. He loved the feeling of fixing something that everyone else said was broken forever. The crew of the CNS Adamantine knew well. He was the chief mechanic, the man who kept their ship alive. When the power failed, they called. When the life support made strange noises, they called. When anything broke anywhere on the ship, the answer was always the same. Call, he will fix it. But the crew also knew something else about. He was lonely. He had never married. He had no children. He spent his free time alone in his small room, reading old books about Earth history or listening to music from 100 years ago. When the crew had parties, would come for a few minutes, stand in the corner with a drink he never finished, and then quietly leave when he thought no one was watching. Some of the younger crew members thought this was funny. They did not understand why a man would choose to be alone. They did not know about the nights spent wondering if anyone would notice if he disappeared. They did not know about the messages he wrote to his sister but never sent because he did not want to bother her. They only saw a quiet old mechanic who was easy to laugh at. Ensign was an alien species with beautiful scales that changed color based on their emotions. Her scales were currently glowing a soft pink, which meant she was planning something mischievous. She sat in the mess hall with Lieutenant Commander, a human officer with a quick smile and a reputation for practical jokes. "The Admiral's inspection fleet arrives tomorrow," said quietly. "Everyone will be busy with formal events and meetings, everyone except, of course. He will hide in the engine room like he always does." Nodded. "The man is allergic to social events. I have never seen anyone so uncomfortable around people." "Which is exactly why this plan will work." Leaned closer, her scales brightening. "We tell that a female officer from the Admiral's staff wants to meet him. We say she read about his heroics during the incident and became fascinated with him. We convince him to dress up nice and wait on the observation deck for his special date." Raised an eyebrow. "And then what? The date never shows up." "Exactly. We watch from the cameras and laugh. It is harmless fun. He waits for an hour, realizes he was tricked, and we all have a good story to tell." Thought about this for a moment. Part of him felt that this was cruel, was a good man who had never hurt anyone on purpose, but then remembered the coffee maker incident, had tried to improve the machine in the officer's lounge, and now it only produced a thick brown liquid that tasted like engine lubricant mixed with burnt plastic. Had not enjoyed a proper cup of coffee in 3 weeks. "I'm in," he said. Smiled, her scales flashing bright pink. "Perfect. Now we just need to spread the word to the others. The more people watching, the funnier it will be." By the end of the day, 12 crew members had joined the plan. They were all people who had small complaints about. One officer was still angry because had accidentally locked him in a storage closet for 6 hours. A technician blamed for a promotion she did not receive, even though had nothing to do with it. Another crew member simply enjoyed watching other people suffer. They created a fake name for the imaginary officer, Commander Vance. They decided she worked in tactical planning and had specifically requested to meet the famous mechanic who had saved the Adamantine during the incident. They practiced their lies until they sounded natural and believable. The incident was real, at least. 2 years ago, the Adamantine had been attacked by raiders near. The main reactor had been damaged, and the ship was slowly dying. The captain had ordered an evacuation, but there was not enough time. The raiders were jamming their communications, and help was too far away. Had done something impossible that day. He had crawled into the damaged reactor section, where the radiation levels were dangerous and the temperature was rising every minute. Using nothing but basic tools and his own knowledge, he had bypassed the broken systems and kept the reactor stable long enough for rescue ships to arrive. When they pulled him out, He was barely conscious and his hands were burned. But everyone on the ship was alive because of him. The captain had recommended for a medal, had refused. He said he was just doing his job and someone else deserved the honor more than him. This was typical behavior. He never wanted attention or praise. He just wanted to fix things and be left alone. Now his were going to use his heroism as bait for a cruel joke. The next morning, and found in his usual place, he was deep inside an access panel, working on a gravity compensator that had been making strange vibrations. Only his legs were visible, sticking out from the wall like he had been swallowed by the ship itself. Called out cheerfully, "We have incredible news." Slowly extracted himself from the panel. His face was smeared with lubricant, and his uniform was covered in dust. He looked tired, as he always did, but his eyes were kind. "If this is about the coffee maker," said, "I already apologized. I truly thought my modifications would improve the flavor. The chemical reaction was unexpected." "Forget about the coffee maker," said, carefully controlling her scales to show no deception. "This is about something much more important. This is about you and a woman." Stared at them. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he laughed, a short and uncertain sound. When neither nor laughed with him, his smile faded. "What do you mean?" he asked. "There is an officer on the Admiral's staff," explained, his voice smooth and confident. "Her name is Commander Vance. She works in tactical planning, very prestigious position. Apparently, she read the classified report about what you did during. She was extremely impressed." "Impressed," repeated the word like he did not understand its meaning. "More than impressed," added. "She specifically requested to meet you, in person, tomorrow evening, observation deck 1900 hours. She suggested you wear your dress uniform." Looked back and forth between them, searching for signs that this was a joke. But Scales remained calm, and Smile seemed genuine. "You are serious," said quietly. "Completely serious," confirmed. "Would we lie to you about something like this?" In his chest, something he had buried long ago began to stir. It was a small and fragile feeling, easily crushed. It was hope. "I suppose I should find my dress uniform," said. "I am not sure it still fits." And exchanged a quick glance. The trap was set. Tomorrow evening they would have their entertainment and would learn a valuable lesson about trusting people, whatever that lesson might be. As they walked away, neither of them noticed the way his hands trembled slightly as he returned to his work. Neither of them saw the small smile that appeared on his weathered face, the first real smile he had worn in months. Neither of them understood what they had just done to a lonely man's heart. Spent the entire next day in a strange kind of fog. He worked on his usual repairs, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. He kept thinking about Commander Vance. What did she look like? What would she think of him when they met? Would she be disappointed when she saw that he was just an ordinary mechanic with rough hands and a face that had never been handsome even when he was young? He had so many questions, but he was too afraid to ask anyone. If he asked too many questions, people might think he was desperate. And he was desperate, but he did not want anyone to know that. During his lunch break, did something he had not done in years. He went to the ship's small store and bought a bottle of cologne. The young ensign working the counter gave him a curious look but said nothing. Felt his face grow hot with embarrassment as he paid for the purchase and quickly left. Back in his quarters, he searched through his closet for his dress uniform. He found it buried beneath old engineering manuals and spare parts he had been meaning to return to storage. The uniform was wrinkled and smelled like metal, but it was still intact. He hung it up and hoped the wrinkles would fall out by evening. The afternoon passed slowly. Tried to focus on his work, but every few minutes he found himself checking the time. The hours seemed to crawl by like wounded animals. He made small mistakes that he never usually made. He dropped tools. He forgot which systems he had already checked. His assistant, A young human woman named Tors noticed something was different. "Chief, are you feeling okay?" Tors asked. "You seem distracted today." Wiped his forehead with a rag. "I am fine, just thinking about something." "Something good, I hope." Allowed himself a small smile. "Maybe we will see." Tors wanted to ask more questions, but returned to his work with unusual intensity. She decided to leave him alone. Whatever was happening in the chief's life, it was clearly personal. At 1700 hours, left the engine room early for the first time in months. His assistant watched him go with surprise. The chief never left early. The chief sometimes forgot to leave at all and had to be reminded that his shift had ended hours ago. In his quarters, stood under the shower for a long time. He scrubbed his hands until they were raw, trying to remove every trace of grease from his skin. The grease never fully came out anymore. It had become part of him over the decades, absorbed into the very lines of his palms. But he tried anyway. He shaved carefully, taking his time to avoid cutting himself. He trimmed his hair as best he could with the small scissors from his emergency kit. When he looked in the mirror, he saw a face he barely recognized. Without the usual layer of grime and the shadow of stubble, he looked almost presentable. Almost. The dress uniform fit, though it was across the shoulders than he remembered. He had gained muscle over the years from lifting heavy equipment and crawling through tight spaces. The fabric pulled slightly when he raised his arms, but it would have to do. He did not own any other formal clothing. He opened the cologne and carefully applied a small amount to his neck. The scent was strong and unfamiliar. He hoped it was not too much. He had no experience with these things. At 1845 hours, left his quarters and walked toward the observation deck. His heart was beating faster than normal. His palms were sweating despite the cool air of the ship's corridors. He passed other crew members who gave him strange looks. They were not used to seeing the chief in anything but his worn work uniform. Some of them knew about the prank. They smiled and wished him good luck with expressions that were slightly too enthusiastic. Did not notice anything unusual. He was too focused on not tripping over his own feet. The observation deck was empty when he arrived. This was expected. He was 15 minutes early. He wanted to be there first so he would not seem rude or disrespectful. First impressions were important, or so he had read somewhere. The deck was a beautiful space, one of the few areas on the ship designed for pleasure rather than function. The curved transparent wall offered a stunning view of space. The adamantine was currently docked at Helios, a massive structure that served as a hub for military and civilian ships in this sector. Through the viewport, could see dozens of vessels of all sizes, their lights blinking against the darkness like artificial stars. One ship stood out from the others. The CNS Indomitable, the Admiral's flagship, hung in space like a predator at rest. It was 3 times the size of the adamantine and bristled with weapons, had never served on a ship that large. He wondered what its engines sounded like when they were running at full power. He checked his 1856. He clasped his hands behind his back, then moved them to his front, then back again. He did not know what to do with his hands. They felt enormous and awkward at the ends of his arms. He wished he had something to hold, a tool or anything to keep his fingers occupied. 1902. Commander Vance was late. That was fine. She was probably busy with important Admiral business. Officers at her level had many responsibilities. A meeting with a simple mechanic was probably low on her list of priorities. Walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. He tried to calm his breathing. He reminded himself that this was just a conversation between 2 people. There was nothing to be nervous about. She had asked to meet him, which meant she was at least somewhat interested in talking to him. That was a good sign. 1915. Maybe she had gotten lost. The adamantine was a complicated ship with many corridors that looked similar. Newcomers often wandered for hours before finding their destination. Perhaps someone should have offered to escort her to the observation deck. Felt bad that he had not thought of this earlier. 1927. Behind a large support column on the far side of the deck, hidden in shadows where could not see them, a group of crew members huddled around a small screen. They were watching the observation deck through a maintenance camera that Ensign had secretly activated. On the screen stood alone by the viewport. His shoulders had begun to droop. The hopeful expression he had worn when he first arrived was slowly fading. "How long do we let this go on?" whispered one of the watchers. "Until he gives up," answered, but his voice lacked the amusement he had expected to feel. Scales had shifted from pink to a troubled gray. She had thought this would be funny. She had imagined looking confused and embarrassed for a few minutes before realizing the truth. She had not imagined this slow, painful decline. She had not imagined watching hope die on a man's face in real time. 1935. Checked his again. He told himself that traffic on the station was probably heavy. The Admiral's fleet had brought hundreds of additional personnel to Helios. The corridors and transport tubes would be crowded. Any number of delays could explain why Commander Vance was not here yet. 1943. He straightened his uniform for the 10th time. He adjusted the collar that did not need adjusting. He ran his fingers through his hair and tried to smooth down a stubborn patch that refused to lie flat. 1951. In the shadows, the watchers had grown silent. No one was laughing anymore. The prank had stopped being funny somewhere around the 30-minute mark, when had started packing slowly back and forth, checking his every few seconds like a man counting down to his own execution. "We should stop this," Torres said. She had joined the group out of curiosity, but now she felt sick to her stomach. The chief was a good man. He did not deserve this cruelty. "It has gone too far to stop now," said, though he sounded uncertain. "If we reveal ourselves, he will know we were watching him suffer. That might be worse. So we just let him keep waiting." No one had an answer to that question. On the observation deck, stood alone beneath the stars and wondered what he had done wrong. Had he misunderstood the time? Had he come to the wrong deck? Had Commander Vance changed her mind after learning more about him? He checked his one more time, 1958. He would wait a little longer, he decided. Just in case. Just in case she was still coming. Just in case hope still meant something in a universe that seemed designed to crush it. The doors to the observation deck hissed open. Turned, a desperate smile already forming on his face, ready to forgive any delay, ready to believe any excuse. But the person who walked through those doors was not Commander Vance. It was someone far more unexpected. The woman who entered the observation deck wore the uniform of an admiral. Not just any admiral, but the admiral, the most important admiral in the entire coalition fleet. Her name was, and she was a living legend. Had seen her face in news reports and official broadcasts. Everyone in the military knew who she was. She had commanded the defense of Barnard's Star when the Empire tried to invade human space. She had held the line for 17 days with a fleet that was outnumbered 5-1. When reinforcements finally arrived, Admiral was still on the bridge, bleeding from a head wound and refusing to let anyone treat her until the battle was truly over. Now she was walking across the observation deck, walking directly toward, and he felt like his heart might stop beating entirely. He snapped to attention so fast that something in his back made a popping sound. His hand flew up in a salute that would have made his old drill instructor proud. "Admiral, ma'am," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I apologize, I was not expecting. I mean, I was waiting for someone else, but if you need the observation deck, I can leave immediately." The Admiral stopped a few feet away from him. She was tall for a woman, with silver hair cut short in a practical military style. Her face was weathered by age and stress, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Those eyes studied with an intensity that made him feel like she was reading every secret he had ever kept. Chief Petty Officer, she said. It was not a question. She knew exactly who he was. Yes, ma'am. At ease, Chief. You can lower your hand. Lowered his salute but remained standing stiff and straight. He could not relax in the presence of such authority. His body simply would not allow it. I know why you are here, the Admiral said. I know about Commander Vance. Felt his stomach drop. You do. Commander Vance does not exist, Chief. I checked the manifest of every ship in my fleet. There is no one by that name serving under my command. There never has been. The words hit like physical blows. He had suspected something was wrong when the minutes kept passing and no one appeared. But hearing the confirmation from the Admiral herself made it real in a way that simple suspicion never could. I see, he said quietly. About an hour ago, I was walking through the station corridors when I passed a group of junior officers from this ship. They were laughing about something. I heard them mention a blind date prank in the name. They were making bets on how long you would wait before giving up. Said nothing. His face had become very still, like a machine that had been switched off. I recognized your name, Chief. I have been trying to find you for 17 years. Blinked 17 years. I do not understand, Admiral. No, I suppose you would not. You have a habit of disappearing after you save lives. You transfer to new ships before anyone can properly thank you. You refuse commendations and medals like they are insults rather than honors. You are a remarkably difficult man to pin down. The Admiral reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It was old and worn at the edges, the kind of physical image that almost no one kept anymore in an age of digital records. She held it up so could see. The photograph showed a group of people standing in front of a starship. Most of them wore civilian clothes, but a few were in uniform. They were all smiling, their faces full of relief and joy. In the center of the group stood a much younger Admiral, her arm around the shoulders of a middle-aged woman who was crying happy tears. This was taken 17 years ago, the Admiral said, right after the evacuation of the CNS Redemption. Do you remember that ship? Remembered. Of course he remembered. The Redemption had been his first assignment as a full mechanic rather than an apprentice. A beautiful ship with a flawed reactor design that the engineers had never quite fixed. The reactor breach, said. The coolant system failed and the core temperature began rising. The captain ordered an evacuation, but the escape pods were malfunctioning. Only half of them would launch. 231 people were trapped on that ship, the Admiral continued. The reactor was going to go critical in less than an hour. Rescue ships were too far away to arrive in time. Everyone on board was going to die. I was in the engine room when it happened, said. I could see the problem. The coolant pumps had locked up because of a software error. If someone could manually override the system and force the pumps to cycle, the core temperature would stabilize. But the manual override was inside the reactor chamber. The radiation levels were already lethal. Anyone who went in there would receive a fatal dose within minutes. Looked down at his hands. The emergency suit in the engine room was rated for high radiation environments. I thought it might give me enough time. It gave you exactly 18 minutes, the Admiral said. You crawled into that chamber knowing you would probably die. You found the manual override and forced those pumps to cycle using nothing but hand tools and determination. When we finally pulled you out, you had third-degree burns across 40% of your body and enough radiation exposure to kill 3 normal men. I was in the medical bay for 2 months, admitted. The doctors were not sure I would survive. But you did survive, and because you survived, 231 other people survived too, including me, including my mother. The Admiral pointed to the crying woman in the photograph. She was visiting me on the Redemption when the breach happened. She would have died in that corridor if you had not kept the reactor stable. Stared at the photograph. He did not know what to say. I tried to find you when I recovered, the Admiral continued. I wanted to thank you personally. I wanted to make sure you received every honor you deserved, but you had already transferred to another ship by the time I left the hospital. And you kept transferring, kept moving, kept hiding from any recognition. I did not hide, said. I did my job, that is all. The people who really saved everyone were the rescue crews and the doctors. I just bought them a little time. You bought them time with your own life. You did not know the suit would protect you long enough. You went into that chamber expecting to die, and you did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. That is not just doing your job, Chief. That is heroism. Shifted uncomfortably. He had never liked this kind of attention. Praise made him feel like a fraud, like someone was going to discover at any moment that he was not as capable as they thought. When I heard those officers laughing about their little prank, the Admiral said, her voice growing harder, I felt something I have not felt in a long time. I felt truly angry. Here were these children, playing cruel games with a man who has given more to the coalition than they will likely give in their entire careers. Here they were, using your loneliness as entertainment. She turned slightly and raised her voice, not shouting, but projecting in the way that officers learn to make themselves heard across a chaotic bridge. I know you are watching. All of you come out now. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, figures began to emerge from behind the support columns. Ensign, Lieutenant Commander, Tors, others whose names knew and whose faces he had trusted. 12 people in total, 12 members of his own crew, 12 people who had decided that his pain would be amusing. The Admiral watched them line up with an expression that could have frozen reactor coolant. Watched them too, and for the first time in his life, he understood what betrayal truly felt like. Not anger, not rage, just a quiet, hollow emptiness where trust used to live. Ma'am, began, his voice shaking. This was just a harmless joke. We never meant to. Silence. The Admiral did not raise her voice, but the word cut through the air like a blade. You will speak when I give you permission to speak. Until then, you will stand at attention and you will listen. The 12 pranksters snapped to attention. Some of them were trembling. All of them were terrified. Admiral, hero of Barnard's Star, commander of the 7th Fleet, began to explain exactly what kind of man they had chosen as their victim. And the silence that fell over the observation deck was absolute. Admiral walked slowly in front of the 12 crew members who stood at attention. Her boots made soft sounds on the deck plating. No one else made any sound at all. Even the normal background hum of the ship seemed to have grown quiet, as if the adamantine itself was listening. Let me tell you about the man you decided to humiliate, the Admiral began. Chief Petty Officer has served the Coalition for 34 years. In that time, he has saved the lives of over 1,000 people across 12 different vessels. I know this because I have read his complete service record, every report, every incident, every commendation that he refused to accept. She stopped in front of Ensign, whose scales had turned a deep shade of ashamed blue. On the CNS Redemption, he crawled into a radioactive reactor chamber to save 231 lives. On the CNS Stalwart, he sealed a hull breach with his own body while the emergency systems activated, nearly suffocating in the process. On the CNS Defiance, he stayed behind during an evacuation to repair the navigation computer, ensuring that the escape pods could reach safety instead of drifting into empty space. She moved to stand in front of Lieutenant Commander. On this very ship, the Adamantine, he saved every single one of you during the incident. The raiders had disabled your reactor and jammed your communications. You were all going to die, slowly and painfully, as life support failed system by system. Fixed the unfixable. He kept you alive long enough for rescue to arrive. And how did he react to all this heroism? Did he demand medals? Did he brag about his accomplishments? Did he expect special treatment? The Admiral shook her head slowly. No. He refused 3 commendations because he said other people deserved them more. He turned down 2 promotions because he wanted to stay in the engine room where he could do the most good. When the Coalition tried to give him the Medal of Valor, the highest honor a mechanic can receive, he sent it back with a note that said simply, "Thank you, but I was just doing my job." She turned to face all 12 of them at once. This is the man you chose to hurt. This is the man whose loneliness you decided to exploit for your amusement. A man who has given everything to the people around him and asked for nothing in return. A man who is so humble that he genuinely does not understand why anyone would consider him special. Tors was crying silently, tears running down her cheeks. She had worked with for 2 years. She had eaten lunch with him almost every day, and she had never known any of this. He had never told her. He had never told anyone. "Ma'am," said quietly from behind the Admiral, "if I may speak." The Admiral turned to look at him. "Of course, Chief." They did not know about any of that. I never talk about those things because they are not important. What matters is that the ships kept flying and the people stayed safe. The rest is just details. You are defending them. The Admiral seemed genuinely surprised. "They are my crew. They made a mistake. People make mistakes." Looked at the 12 faces in front of him. Some were crying. Some were staring at the floor in shame. All of them looked like they wished the deck would open up and swallow them whole. "I know what it is like to make mistakes. I have made plenty of my own. The important thing is to learn from them and do better." The Admiral studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone present. She laughed. Not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh, but a warm sound of genuine amusement. "You impossible man," she said. "You are standing here, the victim of a cruel prank, and you are worried about the feelings of the people who hurt you. This is exactly why I have been trying to find you for 17 years. This is exactly why you are one of the finest human beings I have ever known." She turned back to the assembled crew members. "Chief may be willing to forgive you, but I am not as generous as he is. Your actions have consequences, and you will face them. Each of you will write a formal letter of apology. Not a quick message, not a casual note, but a proper letter explaining what you did and why it was wrong. You will read those letters aloud to Chief in the mess hall tomorrow morning, in front of the entire crew." Several of the pranksters turned pale at this pronouncement. Public humiliation to match the public humiliation they had planned for. "Additionally," the Admiral continued, "you will all be assigned to engineering maintenance rotation for the next month. You will work alongside Chief. You will learn what he does every day to keep this ship running. You will see firsthand the sacrifices he makes so that you can breathe clean air and drink clean water and sleep safely in your bunks. And finally, you will remember this night. You will remember what it felt like to stand here and face the consequences of your cruelty. And the next time you think about using someone's kindness against them, you will remember that kindness is not weakness. Kindness is strength. And the people who show it deserve respect, not ridicule." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Dismissed. All of you. Report to your quarters and begin writing those letters. I expect them to be genuine and heartfelt. I will be reading them myself before tomorrow morning." The 12 crew members scattered like leaves in a strong wind. They could not get off the observation deck fast enough. Within seconds, and the Admiral were alone again. The silence that followed was different from the tense quiet of before. This silence was almost comfortable. "You did not have to do that," said. "Defend me like that, make them face consequences." "Yes, I did." The Admiral walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. "I have spent 17 years wanting to thank you properly. I finally get the chance, and I find you standing alone on an observation deck, waiting for a woman who does not exist, your hopes slowly dying while people laugh at you through cameras. How could I not intervene?" Joined her at the viewport. Standing next to her, he realized they were almost the same height. He had always imagined admirals as somehow larger than life, but she was just a person like him. "I never knew you were on the Redemption," he said. I never knew your mother was there too. My mother passed away 3 years ago, natural causes at the age of 92. She had a good life, a long life, a life she would not have had if you had not given her those extra decades. The Admiral's voice was soft but steady. She talked about you often, the mysterious mechanic who saved her. She always hoped she would get to thank you in person. I am sorry I never gave her that chance. You were doing what you always do, helping people and then disappearing before anyone can make a fuss about it. The Admiral smiled slightly. It is an admirable quality, even if it is frustrating for people like me who want to express gratitude. Was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Why were you really on the Redemption? That was a small ship, not the kind of vessel that would normally carry someone of your rank." I was a commander back then, not an admiral, and I was visiting my mother for her birthday. She was working as a civilian consultant on board, helping to catalog alien plant specimens from a recent survey mission. The Admiral chuckled softly. She was a botanist, if you can believe it. Spent her whole life studying plants on other worlds. She used to say that flowers are the same everywhere, just wearing different colors. She sounds like a wonderful person. She was, and she raised me to always repay my debts, which brings me to why I am still standing here. The Admiral turned to face directly. "Chief, would you do me the honor of joining me for dinner this evening?" Blinked dinner. There is a restaurant on the station. Real Earth food, not the synthesized material we usually eat on ships. I have had a reservation there for 17 years, waiting for the day I would finally track you down. She extended her hand. "What do you say?" Looked at her hand. He looked at the stars outside the viewport. He looked at the empty deck where he had stood waiting for a woman who did not exist, his heart full of foolish hope. He reached out and took the Admiral's hand. "I would like that very much," he said. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, smiled a smile that reached all the way to his eyes. The next morning, the mess hall of the CNS Adamantine was packed with people. Word had spread through the ship like fire through dry grass. Everyone knew what had happened on the observation deck. Everyone knew about the prank, the Admiral's intervention, and the public apologies that were about to take place. Crew members who usually ate in their quarters had come to the mess hall. Officers who normally maintained professional distance from enlisted personnel stood shoulder to shoulder with mechanics and technicians. Even the captain was there, standing near the back with an expression that suggested he was not pleased with what some of his crew had done. Sat alone at a table near the front of the room. He wore his regular work uniform, already stained with fresh grease from the morning maintenance cycle. He had tried to clean up a little, but old habits were hard to break. The grease was part of him now. Admiral stood beside him, her presence commanding respect without any effort. She had changed into a fresh uniform but otherwise looked exactly as she had the night before. Calm, confident, ready to see justice done. The 12 crew members who had participated in the prank stood in a line near the far wall. Each of them held a piece of paper in their trembling hands. They had stayed up all night writing their apologies. Some had rewritten their letters multiple times, searching for the right words to express their shame. "We will begin," the Admiral announced. Her voice carried easily through the silent room. "Ensign, you may go first." Stepped forward. Her scales were cycling through colors rapidly, betraying her emotional turmoil. Blue for shame, gray for fear, a flicker of purple that might have been regret. She unfolded her letter and began to read in a voice that shook with every word. "Chief Petty Officer, I owe you an apology that I do not know how to give. Words feel too small for what I have done. I took your kindness and your loneliness and your hope, and I used them as weapons against you. I did this because I was bored and cruel and did not stop to think about you as a real person with real feelings." She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Last night, I learned things about you that I should have known years ago. I learned that you are a hero who refuses to be called a hero. I learned that you have saved more lives than I will probably ever touch in my entire career. I learned that the man I decided to hurt is one of the best people on this ship, maybe one of the best people in the entire fleet." Her voice cracked. "I am sorry. I know those words are not enough. I know I cannot undo what I did, but I want you to know that I will never forget this. I will never forget the look on your face when you were waiting for someone who was not coming, and I will spend the rest of my time on this ship trying to be worthy of serving alongside you." She folded her letter and stepped back, her scales settling into a deep, sorrowful blue. One by one, the other crew members came forward to read their apologies. Lieutenant Commander spoke about how easy it had been to see as a target rather than a person. Tors cried through her entire letter, apologizing not just for participating in the prank, but for never taking the time to truly know the man she worked with every day. Each apology was different, but they all shared certain themes: shame at what they had done, surprise at learning about his heroic past, a promise to do better in the future. When the last letter had been read, the mess hall fell silent. Everyone looked at, waiting to see how he would respond. Stood up slowly. He looked at the 12 people who had hurt him, their faces red with shame, their eyes unable to meet his. He looked at the crowd of crew members who had come to witness this moment. He looked at the Admiral, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. "Thank you for your apologies," he said simply. "I accept them." A murmur went through the crowd. Some people seemed surprised that he would forgive so easily. Others nodded with understanding, recognizing the grace in his response. "I want you all to know something," continued. "Last night, I learned something important too. I learned that Admiral has been looking for me for 17 years. She wanted to thank me for something I did a long time ago, something I had almost forgotten about. She called me a hero." He shook his head slowly. "I am not a hero. I am just a mechanic. I fix things that are broken. That is all I have ever done, and that is all I know how to do. When I see something that needs fixing, I fix it. I do not think about medals or recognition or what people will say about me later. I just do the work." His voice grew stronger as he spoke. "But last night made me realize something. The work is not just about machines. It is about people too. Every engine I repair keeps people alive. Every system I maintain gives people another day to see their families, to do their jobs, to live their lives. I knew this before, but I do not think I really understood it until last night." He turned to face the 12 crew members directly. "You hurt me. I will not pretend that you did not. But you also gave me a gift, even though you did not mean to. You showed me that I am not invisible. You showed me that people notice me, even if it is for the wrong reasons. And Admiral showed me that some people have been noticing me for a very long time." The Admiral stepped forward to stand beside him. "Chief is correct. He is noticed. He is valued. And from this day forward, I want everyone on this ship to remember that. The people who work in the shadows, the ones who keep the lights on and the engines running, they are the backbone of everything we do. Without them, none of us would survive. They deserve our respect, our gratitude, and our kindness." She looked around the room, meeting eyes with as many people as she could. "I expect every person on this ship to treat Chief and every other support crew member with the dignity they deserve. If I hear of anyone disrespecting them, they will answer to me personally. Is that understood?" A chorus of "Yes, Admiral" echoed through the mess hall. The crowd began to disperse slowly, people returning to their duties with thoughtful expressions on their faces. Many of them stopped to shake his hand or pat him on the shoulder as they passed. Some thanked him for things he did not remember doing. Others simply nodded at him with respect in their eyes. When the mess hall was nearly empty, Admiral turned to with a warm smile. "You handled that beautifully, Chief." "I just told the truth," said. "That is always easier than lying." Simple wisdom from a simple mechanic. The Admiral laughed softly. "You are remarkable. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a medal, the Medal of Valor that had refused 17 years ago. It gleamed in the artificial light of the mess hall like a small captured star. "I brought this with me from Earth," she said. "I have been carrying it around for years, hopping for the chance to give it to you in person. Will you accept it now? Not as a burden or an obligation, but as a thank you from everyone whose life you have touched." Looked at the medal for a long time. He thought about all the years he had spent refusing recognition, convinced that he did not deserve it. He thought about the look on Admiral's face when she talked about her mother. He thought about the crew members who had apologized to him, their eyes full of new understanding. "Yes," he said finally, "I will accept it." The Admiral pinned the medal to his chest. It was a small thing, just a piece of metal on a ribbon, but it felt heavier than anything had ever carried. "One more thing," the Admiral said. "About that dinner we shared last night. I enjoyed it very much. Would you be interested in doing it again sometime?" Felt something warm spreading through his chest. It was that same fragile, foolish feeling he had felt when he first learned about Commander Vance. But this time, it did not feel so fragile. This time, it felt like it might actually survive. "I would like that," he said. "I would like that very much." Admiral smiled at Chief Petty Officer. And somewhere in the depths of the ship, an engine hummed quietly, keeping them all alive, watched over by the man who had never stopped caring even when no one seemed to notice. Some pranks have unexpected endings. Some mechanics are never as invisible as they believe. And some heroes, the quiet ones who work in the shadows, eventually find the recognition they deserve. Not because they asked for it, not because they demanded it, but because the universe sometimes has a way of balancing its scales.